Hello, and welcome back. Welcome to the 2025 New Life Festival. And, what an unfortunate little showing it is. I didn't really intend to do a New Life Festival stream this year. And it's mostly because I haven't really been keeping up with the events as much as I used to. It's mostly because all it really is like, hey, I'm gonna do the quests and just give a quick little channel update, because that's all it is every time, right? But you'll notice I am on my level 28 future playthrough character, or I should say future storyline. But I'll not bore you with the details of that. I'm just doing this because one of the golden pursuits, as you can see, is to earn levels, and I don't exactly have any. So I'm just trying to get as much as I can out of the way now. And you'll see I'm taking quite the shortcut to get over to Shadowfen, because I don't feel like trekking through that mess of a location. I'd rather go through here. Cut through Blackwood real quick. But, yeah. The New Life Festival this year is kind of disappointing, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that if we take a look at our collections, right, I'll do the usual browsing of the unlockable items, right? What do you get this year for the New Life Festival? Well, let's see. We got, RK? No. Barbas? No. 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 No, 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 no. Huh. You know, it almost looks like there isn't a single actual armor unlock this year. And it's because there isn't. No more Snowhawk Mage, sorry. Actually, that wasn't even from New Life Festival. No more Skull Explorer. No more Evergreen Hat, you know what I mean? No more Morningstar Frostwear. Nah, none of that. You get none of it. There is no unlocks this year. Which I think is the first time that they've had a New Life Festival where it didn't have an unlock. Like a new outfit style to come with it. There are, however, new weapon styles, as you will see when I scroll down here. There is one... Yeah, so we got this stuff. The Evergreen Saturalia weapon style, which, to be fair, is pretty nice. I like them quite a bit. Now, we're not going to look at them there, because these are tied into the Golden Pursuits. And this is kind of why I wanted to do this video, because it has a lot to do with this. So usually how I do my update videos is like, oh yeah, you know, here's what I plan on doing for the channel, blah 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 this, blah 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 that. This time it's going to be a bit more of a genuine chat, but I will also preview the rewards while I'm doing it. So there was recently a developer letter put out regarding 2025. And in fact, I will pull it up for you real quick, and I will just read from it. So, what we've got here is basically them saying blah blah blah, you know, we did a quick look back at all the things that happened this year. And it's time to look forward, which will comprise most of the end-of-the-year message. Change is constant, especially in gaming, blah, blah, blah. Now, looking forward, we're looking to see how we can change ESO and keep it relevant, awesome, and compelling. Interesting stuff. So, since 2017, we've released amazing content and systems every year, but always on the same schedule. So it would seem that they're basically saying that they can't keep up with the deadlines that they've been doing for effectively 10 years now. And then they say, I am very happy to say that starting in 2025, you'll see new ideas and ways of launching content start to roll out. So, turning the page on chapters, it reads, "We have been incredibly successful with our strong annual chapter releases, blah blah blah. We still do lots of story content," or sorry, it says we will still do lots of story content, but now, looking into 2025, we need to concentrate on different types of content to support all types of ESO players. So we are putting chapters aside, and we will be focusing on a new philosophy, which will be seasons. And it does say, as 2025 will be a transition year for new content, we are still going to have a new zone-based content launch in 2025, but you'll have to wait until April to hear the specifics about it. So we're still getting a new zone, is what that means. And I feel like I've not seen a lot of people talk about that. Is that we're still getting a zone. However, they are transitioning over into seasonal content, and these golden pursuits, right, the things that I just showed you, are the start of that. Now, this one only lasted 30 days. The first golden pursuit was only a week long, and basically just had a little bit of a preview reward, which wasn't anything like too crazy or insulting. It was actually quite nice. I liked it because it was simple, it was quick, it was painless, it was simplistic. And on some extent, so is this one. However, I will say that I'll continue reading here, but they basically say that the next ones are going to be like proper battle pass length, which means that they'll be like 3 months, 2 to 3 months long, which is something that I'm not thrilled about, because that basically means, like, ESO is foregoing the traditional DLC format in favor of basically what Destiny is doing, and I don't like what Destiny's doing. There's a reason I'm not playing that game, and that's kind of part of the reason. They said that they're not removing content, though. They were very adamant about that they're not going to be doing exactly what Destiny is doing. Which is a little bit, you know, I'd like to hear that, but it's still like, I don't know that I trust you 100%. I feel like there's still some questions that I have regarding a lot of this. But, introducing seasons. Over the course of 2025, we will be moving towards a seasonal content model. We will be talking much more about this in the future, but in 2025, expect to see named seasons of 3 or 6. Oh, I'm sorry. I said 2 to 3. My bad. 3 or 6 months. It's half the fucking year. Also, sorry, I don't usually curse on the Elder Scrolls videos, but this is, like, actually bothering me. This is bothering me a lot. Like, that's... Because it's a big change, and I'm not super happy about it. A lot of people are like, yeah, this is good, this is great, this is wonderful. Me? Not so much. It's mostly because I don't do well with big changes. That's more of a personal problem. Maybe for the overall health of the game, that would be good, but if I'm to be entirely honest with you, this screams death of the game. This screams maintenance mode is coming. And I said that with the 10-year anniversary. I'm sure there's a couple of shorts over on Ogresaurus Shreks 2 that speak something to that nature, but I've been saying this ever since the Gold Road release. End of life is coming. Like, there is no way that this can persist in the same manner that it has been. So, continuing with what I was saying, seasons of 3 or 6 months, which include a mix of themed story content, events, store items, dungeons, and more. So basically what that means is that they will be periodically adding new individual quest lines, it seems, which I'm actually not opposed to. That is something that I have been saying for quite some time, and it is something that doesn't exactly mesh well with the content releases that they've been doing. So, on some level, I'm not 100% opposed to this idea, but I am a little skeptical about it. You know, I'm not 100%, you know, convinced or on board with it just yet. But I see the vision. You know, I see what they're trying to do. I'm not 100% convinced. But it is, I like that. I like that direction that they're going in. I think that is a good idea. And it says 2025 will be a mix of old and new as we move the dev team towards creating smaller, bite-sized pieces of content. We will still have some larger items that we've been working on for over a year, which you'll see launch as well. So that basically tells me they've got one more big zone planned, and then after that, they are cooked, right? They're just going to be doing, effectively, Battle Pass crap for the foreseeable future. Which basically means that a lot of the map, right, keep in mind, we've still got a lot of map space to work with. Well, I say a lot, we actually don't. We've got the remainder of Skyrim, we've got the Blacklight region here, which isn't super duper necessary, but I could see like a small quest line playing out in the Blacklight region. We've got the upper half of the Telvanni Peninsula plus the Telvanni Isles. There's still all of Sheogorath, which they could add to. All of Solstheim. You've got the Nibini Valley, which is still yet to be touched. You've got the Topol Bay region, the jungle. I forget what it's called. Sorry. You've got this little tip of Murkmire. You've got the there I said Murkmire. This little tip of Blackmarsh. You've got the rest of Blackmarsh, the whole rest of Blackmarsh here, and you've got basically the entire what's left of Hammerfell. And that's it. That's actually not a lot, right? In terms of my original theory of the Direni Tower prologue that they've removed from the game. I should have done a stream on that while it was still available, but unfortunately I didn't. But the Direni Tower prologue had 5 portals left that were untouched, which implied 5 more chapters, to which I speculated, okay, we're getting probably the Pale or you know, Whiterun as a thing. We're probably getting the Rahad region over here. We're probably getting Nibini Valley, and then we're probably getting Blackmarsh, and maybe Solstheim, maybe Telvanni Isles, and then they would just kind of leave the rest blank or fill those out as individual DLCs. But now it sounds like chapters are done. Like, permanently done. They still have one zone. Who knows what it's going to be? My bet is on the Nordic region. I think it's going to be the Winterhold stuff. Mostly because they did a lot of talking about Winterhold stuff in Gold Coast, or not Gold Coast, Gold Road. But we'll see. And they go on to continue, from what they were saying. Freeing up the dev team from needing to adhere to a strict annual cycle means we'll be able to have teams launch content when it's ready throughout the year, and not have to work to a date in June. This will let us focus on a greater variety of content spread over the year. This supports the seasons model, and will enable us to release content, updates, fixes, and systems in a more efficient manner. So basically what they're saying is that they can't do deadlines anymore. We're just going to put something out when it's done. Which is good on paper, but what that also means is that we'll probably end up seeing a lot more things come out when they think it's done, when in reality it's not. And that also means that the PTS is going to be a nightmare of trying to figure out what exactly needs to be fixed. And they even say that later in the thing, that PTS is basically just going to be hyper-experimental from this point on, which sounds cancerous, in my opinion. But we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see how it goes. Like I said, I'm not super thrilled with this. And then it goes on. A new focus on change and experimentation. We've been hearing from you, the community, that we need to experiment more, to shake things up and not be so predictable. I don't think anyone's actually said that. In fact, from the recent Battlegrounds update, it's quite the opposite. Nobody liked that update. I haven't even touched Battlegrounds yet, but everyone says it sucks. People genuinely miss the old Battlegrounds, which is hilarious, because not a whole lot of people really played that to begin with. But I think there are some things that do need to be shaken up, but I think a lot of people actually like consistency. They just want new and interesting things. They don't want shit to be drastically changed. There I go cursing again. Apologies. So yeah, we've already started on some ideas that will be tested in 2025. These systems and ideas will be clearly marked as experiments in the patch notes, and are ideas that may or may not be fleshed out into the full game. Which basically means they might not even make it in. So they're just flying by the seat of their pants here. They're just doing whatever they want. Here's some of the ideas we are working on, right? So, and keep in mind, these are the things, because this is in the experiment section. These are the things they are saying are experiments, which means they might not even make it into the game. So, they have listed. And the first one is, we seriously need to address the Cyrodiil performance. Our ambitious goal is to return it to the concurrence levels we supported in 2014. So, we will be experimenting with a Cyrodiil campaign where all classes will have PvP-specific and more performant skills that replace the standard player skills with the expectation that we can support more players per campaign. This I like. This is a change I think is fantastic. It's something I've been saying for a while. Some skills, clearly, are just not built for PvP. And some skills clearly are, and overperform significantly. As well as sets, but that's something that I think is another questionable, right? How, like, when we start delving into that territory, at what point is it like, just give us set classes, you know what I mean? But then, you're not going to have as much diversity, and you're not going to have the game be nearly as interesting. But I think this is a good change. But who knows if it'll even make it in, because it's just an experiment. And then we have increasing the difficulty of standard overworld content. Now, on paper, I like that, as long as it's an opt-in choice. I'm totally comfortable with the current difficulty of overworld content as it stands. Because it's accessible to everybody, but I think if you want a veteran instance, you should be allowed to do that. If you want the game to be more difficult for you, you should be allowed to do that. I think there should be a veteran instance of each location. That way, it would also filter out, right, for instance, the... I don't want to say it's a social problem, but it really is. Like, for instance, if you go to any of the starting areas, right, with maybe the exception of Davin's Watch, but I don't really hang out there anyway. If you go to Daggerfall, if you go to Volkelgard, it is like going to Mos Eisley on Tatooine. You know what I mean? Like, it is a cesspit of veteran players basically taking advantage of new people and either misleading them or lying to them, or in worst case scenarios, genuinely grooming them in ways that are not healthy for the overall state of the community. And I think that filtering out the genuine bad seeds in a veteran instance where all of the, you know, the hardest of the hard, you know, all of those people can just hang out there, leave the new people to either figure out things on their own or have people that are actually interested in helping them stay in those areas. That way, you don't end up scaring people away or confusing people with, you know, an overzealous social aspect. Because that's definitely happened quite a bit. But I think this is an interesting idea. I definitely think making Overland content more difficult, it's a choice. I'm not opposed to it as long as it's optional. But like I said, might not even make it into the game. It's just an experiment. Improving the overall feel of combat with animation, FX, and potentially audio work, that's absolutely needed. I cannot stand how bad this game looks, especially in terms of combat. This game could do with a little flair in its animations. This game could do with a little clarity as well in its animations. And I think all of these decisions that they're making here are pretty good ones. I think a lot of that stuff could be worked on a lot. And the animations are things that they've been working on quite a bit. Like, you look at all the new emotes and all the new animations in general that they've added. They're all significantly better than what we've had in previous years. and it makes all of the OG animations look and feel especially bad. Specifically in first person, that stuff's rough. There's a reason I don't really play in first person all that much anymore, but it's a habit that I really should get back into, especially when I start the playthrough up again. And don't worry, the playthrough will come up, because that is a decision that I've been pining for some time, especially being kicked into gear with the news that's been brought with this developer letter, which we will continue with. The next one is experimenting with more zones like Craglorn, although not as large an area or scope, because Craglorn is like the second biggest region in the game. It created exclusively for high-end group and soft group content with associated gear chase. So basically they just want smaller Craglorns, like, dotting the world, so that instead of all of the endgame PvP people just hanging out in Craglorn and being a nuisance, they will instead hang out in multiple different places. So basically that would mean like a trial per location, I'd imagine, right? Like if I'm going to design a new zone kind of like Craglorn, I would say, okay, it's gotta have a trial, it's gotta have multiple group delves, it's gotta have multiple public dungeons, I would say, and it's gotta have, whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself, it's gotta have, especially if it's going to be small, it might as well all be group-focused. But, like, I would say soft group for the delves and, like, the over-region areas, but, like, definitely make a dungeon, you know, or the public dungeons be a little bit more difficult. It's just hard to say, because Craglorn's such an odd area on its own. Like, it definitely feels the most MMO-oriented out of all of them. But, you know, it definitely... that one's going to be the toughest one. Is it something I like? No, not necessarily. I'm not really too big a fan of Craglorn, but that's just me. As a single-player individual, I'm not really too crazy about having to, you know, group up with people and all that. That's why I kind of like going into Craglorn with my higher-end characters that can just deal with it themselves. And that's the thing, like, as long as the regions are balanced in such a way that you can deal with it yourself, kind of like with Craglorn, with the exception of world bosses, obviously, then yeah, it should be fine. I don't think it'd be that bad. But moving on, and that one they also say is an experiment, but I feel like it won't be. I feel like that's a dead giveaway, like, they intend on doing that. And then, of course, we have adding and refining tools to make guild recruitment, interaction, and management more easier and logical. Now, I don't really mess around with guilds all that much, and especially after spending enough time in PvP, and in Riften, and in Daggerfall, and just listening to the conversations that these people have about all these things, it sounds toxic. It sounds like I just don't want to deal with it. But I could definitely see making management more easier. Maybe actually having guild dues built into the system. That way you don't end up with certain guilds just straight up extorting specific people. Instead, it would be like a set thing that you cannot change. or that applies to all. That would be interesting. Yeah, there's definitely some sprucing they could do with the guild system. I'm not opposed to it. And that's another change that I think, like, yes, they say they're experimenting, but more than likely those changes will go through into the base game. And I'm not doubting that they don't intend for all of these to go through, but on some level, I definitely think a lot of these things will change from their initial vector that they've established. And then the final bulletin we've got here. We have many more ideas, and of course, we are listening to you, and we'll be coming up with new ideas based on your feedback. So that's it. Those are the experiments they intend on. And then we get to concentrating on new and returning user experience. It's a long time past that we address ESO's new and returning user experience, which I think is overwhelmingly bad. I think they've made a step in the right direction recently by reintroducing the Wailing Prison as the default starting point for everyone. That's what it should have been since the beginning. I understand they want to funnel people into the latest thing, but it's kind of a problem when, you know, it doesn't match, like, with anything that's, you know, in the game to begin with. It kind of creates a bit of an issue. But the game is so large at this point that we need to refine the new user experience. Our goal is to shield new players from being overwhelmed by dozens of content options presented to them upon entering the world. Good decision. Good choice. Because one of the things I have noticed quite a bit after starting multiple new characters recently is that there's too much to do. Like Lyris right here. I should not see Lyris here. There should be prerequisites to seeing certain quest lines. At least I believe there should be. Right? I shouldn't be able to see Lyris until I have completed the main quest line of the game. Then I should be able to see Lyris and do all that other stuff. Now, does that mean I should be locked out from going to Greymoor? No, of course not. But I should be locked out from doing the main quest of Greymoor, because I haven't done the prerequisites to do it. And it's not like prerequisite quests don't exist. They do. But I think a big reason for why they don't do this is because that's the product they paid for, and, you know, you can't expect everyone to play the game. Like, genuinely, it's a philosophy that bothers me so much. You can't expect people to play the game. Really? What, like, huh? Now, that's me assuming, you know, but not assuming. That's me reading from what I'm being shown, right? That's not something they physically said, but that's what it feels like. It feels like that might as well be what they're saying with the gameplay and the ideology that we're being shown. Is like, yeah, you can't expect the players to actually play the game in order to understand what's going on. Like, pfft, ridiculous. Then they go on to say, instead, we give them the essential guidance they need to enjoy the game before opening it up to all possibilities. So it does kind of sound like they might be railroading you into doing the main quest first, but I think that's a good thing. Additionally, we have many millions of players who return to the game year after year after taking months, if not years, and it's often confusing for them as to what they should be doing. We need to address this by making sure that the game's map and other quest information UI clearly show the user where they were when they left, and what has been added since then, and where they will find the content they love. Now, I find that interesting, the way they describe that. I'm going to the wrong place. Whoops. I need to be going this way. I've got to be going into Stone Falls. Let's ride. But I find it interesting the way they describe that, because it's odd. Because it really does seem like they're just going to try to keep track of what exactly you've been doing. That way they can kind of pick up where you left off. Because I do understand the confusion aspect of, like, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing problem. Like, that's real. But it's also a little bit strange to me. I don't know. That's one that I'm not 100% certain on, but it's just odd, right? Because that's something you should be able to figure out yourself, I feel. And the game shouldn't hold your hand onto where you left off. But I can understand that. It's just, I don't know how it's going to account for what exactly it was you were trying to do, if that makes any sense. Because people have many different goals playing this game. Like, for instance, you could intend to grind for certain gear. The game doesn't know that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I like it on paper, but in practice I'm not 100% certain on that concept. At least not yet. But here's a few of the items planned to improve the new and returning user experience, some of these launching in 2025 and onwards. So, we've got a new patcher with improved visuals and performance, PC only, mind you. Returning to the original Wailing Prison tutorial, this is already launched, but we'll be regularly tweaking it to improve the experience, which is interesting. So that sounds to me like that that experimental stuff that they were talking about, where it's like, yeah, we're not 100% certain on what exactly we want to do with this yet, but they're figuring it out. And then we've got visually improving the base game zones with updated textures and art assets, starting with the starter islands. These should be rolling out in March 2025, so very soon. Which is what brings me to my new quandary, or whatever the word is I'm thinking of. The playthrough. What should I do with the playthrough if this is how it's going to go? Because I never anticipated them to start actually working on the base game zones. That's crazy. You know, that's something that I thought was unprecedented, if you will. Because those are things that I've genuinely wanted for some time. Because look at this place. Does this look like Eastmarch? No. No, actually, it doesn't. It looks terrible. This place looks terrible. Visually overhauling the base game zones would be a massive benefit to them. Because it means that you don't have to go back to looking at a game that looks like it was made in 2012, 2013. Or sorry, earlier than that, 2007? Right? You can actually have a game that looks good. Which is more than I could ask for. But I definitely think... Because for me, there's some level of preservance that I have for these base game zones, and I was thinking about it while I was playing earlier when I was, you know, trotting through the Alakir Desert and its vast emptiness, and a part of me actually liked it. Because I was like, yeah, this is what a desert should feel like. Like, 0 enemies, just sand as far as the eye can see. And I was like, yeah, that is actually really good. Right? In its own simplistic way, they nailed what the Alakir Desert should be. At least for, like, a couple of feet. Because then you start getting into, like, all the mountainous parts of it, and I'm like, I feel there's too many rocks in this desert, but that first stretch of land in the Alakir Desert is just really, like, man, I like this. Whereas here in Eastmarch, it's always kinda gross. Like, something about it feels cheap, unfinished. I think a lot of it has to do with the rocks. Like, the rocks here just look bad. And the mountains look bad. Like, which one's the throat of the world? Could you tell me? Because the throat of the world's right over here. But if I look over in that direction, I can't even see it. You know what I mean? That's not good. If you go to the the rift, like, the throat of the world's, like, right here. You can't even see it. That's why I like the change in Western Skyrim and the Reach, where you can see the throat of the world from basically every point you're at, because that's how big it is. It's a big place. And it bothers me when they basically don't show how big it actually is in the base Eastmarch and Rift zones, because they look bad. The trees here look bad. Look at those branches, dude. They do not look good. It's just, not good, man. Just not good. But yeah. That's a change that I like, but it also means that I need to expedite the playthrough process. And I think what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to do a quick run-through of every zone. Every base game zone, mind you. Quick run-through of every base game zone. I'm going to take my time with it. Obviously, the starter zones go by within like an hour, 2 hours at most. Those are quick. There's like 0 questing really going on there. It's just the main quests, that's it. So those will go by fast. But definitely something I want to do. But I'm also not certain, because I would like to do the refreshed stuff. I'd like to do the new stuff, because I think that would be interesting too. So I think what I intend on doing is I'm going to do a quick run-through of the starter zones with like a brand new character, honestly, probably on the European server. That way it's as fresh as can possibly be, because I have nothing on that server. And I'll just do like a quick playthrough there, right? I probably won't do all of the side quests or anything like that, you know what I mean? But I just want to experience the zone for what it is, experience the base quest lines of those zones for what they are, and just kind of go from there. I forgot I'm supposed to be throwing balls at people. But yeah, that I think will be my main... The hell was that? But anyway, that I think will be my main biggest problem that I'm dealing with right now, is trying to think of like, okay, what am I going to do with the playthrough now if they periodically update each base game zone? And to iterate on that problem, well, we'll get there, but keep a pin on that. So, then we have not showing new players the prologue quest or chapter quest compass pins. The jury is still out on how Stuga will feel about this. So basically what that means is that you won't see the prologue quests just kind of hanging around anymore, which I think is a good change, but I'm wondering how that is going to look. Like, if I'm a new player who is actually trying to do the prologues, how do I go about that? You know what I mean? Or do they pop up as a prerequisite, or do I actually have to go in the Crown store and pick out which one's which? Because if that's the case, they need to be very specific about how they're going to handle that. I think it's a good choice, because it won't, you know, crowd the base game cities with quests that take you into other locations, because that was very annoying. But, and these are things that they are dead set on. These aren't experiments. These are things that they're doing. But then we get sprucing up the game's PC UI, which is long overdue, and other map and UI systems still in the design idea stage, to make returning to the game more seamless and get you back into the action quickly. Not sure what they mean by this. Genuinely. I really don't know. Like, there's some things that I think would be really nice to have. Like, PC has a lot of really good stuff, like, mini-map in the corner of your screen, like a widget like that. That would be an official add-on, rather than something that's only available to PC. Like, PC's got a lot of nice stuff. Like, they've got maps for lore books, they've got maps for sky shards, things that, as a console player, is extremely obnoxious to go and look for, right? Like, oh, son of a gun. But now we get into the other part that kind of creates a bit of an issue for the playthrough. And this is continuing to tell great stories. With the changes made to our content release model, please be assured that we are not abandoning new quest content, but we will do it in different ways than we previously have, as our focus will not be on adding giant new land masses, although we will do that from time to time. Instead, we will use existing zones and areas to tell new stories. So basically they admit that they are not going to be making a lot of new zones. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that there's not a whole lot of space left on the map for them to really do that. So they might have, like I said, maybe 5 actual, you know, proper zone-sized zones left to give us, and then sprinkled group content areas here and there. But they're also going to be building and iterating on what's already here, which I think is a great idea. Bringing people back to the base game zones is a great idea. They've already implemented quite a bit of that with the companions, because I've recently gone through basically all of the companions except for the Argonian and the Khajiit that they just added. But so far, all of them basically take you through to do base game stuff. Like, you're constantly going through the base game areas. And I think that's actually a great change, because it makes the world feel a bit more alive, a bit more moving. And they actually comment on whether or not you have done those quests in those areas, which I like quite a bit. Because it also narrows down, hey, during my playthrough, which companion is going to go with which character. This makes things flow much, much easier. For me, anyway. But, overall, I think it's a great idea, because it means that certain zones won't just be dead, right? Like, if you're trying to do world bosses in a base game zone, sorry to tell you, man, you're just gonna have to get good at soloing bosses, because you're not gonna get help. People are not in those zones, genuinely. Because there's not really a whole lot to be grinding for in those zones. There is no gear chase in the base game, because every base game set has basically been outclassed by every new set. And that, I think, is another reason why there's not a whole lot of people playing. Yes, introducing new questing content is a good way to get people back in the zones, but keeping them in the zones means you need to introduce an actual gear chase in those places. Not just saying, we've already got all these sets. Like, no, you gotta make them competitive. You gotta make them actually worth it. Because as it stands, most of these are not. Most of these sets are not worth it at all. They're basically they're traps. They're there to, like, fool new players into using them, but after a while, you're just not even gonna use them. Like, no new player is gonna grind for a set that's in a base game zone, only to then have to replace it with something that you get in a dungeon, which is probably quicker and easier to do than grinding a base game zone. Because there's, like, virtually no time limit on it. Once you complete that dungeon, you can immediately go, hey guys, let's do it again, and then do it again. Whereas you gotta wait, like, 20 minutes, for a dolmen to pop up again, or a world boss to pop up again, and that's depending on the zone you're in, right? Like, sorry, this isn't the Alakir Desert. You can't just do a clean sweep of Glenumbra, unfortunately, because nobody wants to go to the top left corner of the map, because it's a pain in the ass. Not every place is built the same. Not every place is equal. The grind is different everywhere, unfortunately, and it's not always worth it or easy to do. Proportionally, either. Like, some sets are just really good and really easy to get, and some sets are really bad and really hard to get. For no reason. It just doesn't make sense to me. But, whatever. But, they continue. So, continuing the stories in existing zones and storylines, and bringing back familiar characters. What does that mean? They don't really elaborate on that. They just kind of say, continuing the stories in existing zones and storylines. Huh? So basically, what I think that means is, and it's something that we've seen, what the hell? What the hell? Okay. But basically, it's something we've seen expressed throughout the chapters, which is, returning characters. It's something they love doing. They love bringing back certain characters over and over and over again, and then certain characters that you do want to see come back, like Naryu, just don't for 8 years. I'm still bitter about that. But, yeah, I think continuing those quest lines is a great idea. Problem, right, which is the same problem I've had with the quest content in this game forever, is what I mentioned earlier, prerequisites. There should be prerequisites to doing these quests. You shouldn't be able to just do them off the rip, because it creates a bit of an issue with the actual... did I not make the jump? No, I didn't. It creates an actual issue with consistency of the plotline, and narrative consistency and narrative dissonance, all that stuff, all that good stuff. Because if I can meet Naryu in Morrowind first, and not... Look at this goofball just doing a cannonball jump every time. That's funny. I didn't make it again. But if I can meet if I can meet Naryu in Morrowind and then meet her again in Deshawn, and she has no recollection of meeting me in Morrowind, that's a problem, right? Because you're not accounting for the freedom that you imply, when in reality, it is a linear storyline. There was an initial timeline plotted, and that change didn't occur until Morrowind/Somerset, when they decided we actually don't want to commit to advancing the timeline, when I think that was the right choice to begin with. I think advancing the timeline was the only way to make sense of this game, and players would eventually just adapt to it, right? Like, if you made it so that it wasn't just everyone has the freedom to go where they please, but instead made it so that it was you have to do these quests in order, you know, kind of like WoW, then people wouldn't be mad, because they would just know that's how it is. And your player base would formulate around that, rather than trying to appeal to everyone, which never works. But what do I know? I'm just looking at an infinitely more successful MMO, to some degree. But yeah, that kind of implies to me, like, things like the Darien Meridia's Champion plotline, the Naryu found family weird romance plotline, maybe Gabrielle Benel, or Benelay, and, you know, Razumdar, maybe even continuing the Alliance War concept to some degree, following up on what happened with Orsinium, you know, cool stuff like that. Things that actually move the story forward rather than just kind of existing in a bottle like it has for 10 years, with the exception of Morrowind, Clockwork City, Somerset, and now Necrom and, you know, the Gold Road. But it continues. We have new stories focused on hallmark Elder Scrolls organizations like Dark Brotherhood, Thieves Guild, Fighters Guild, and Mages Guild. Those are choices. I'm actually totally fine with them reintroducing these things, because I feel like the Dark Brotherhood questline really just kind of ends, in a way. Like, I guess it's satisfying, but it is kind of like, are we just kind of, like, free to come and go as we please? You know, because, like, being in the Dark Brotherhood is a commitment, you know? And that's a kind of a narrative problem that's occurred throughout all of the games, is that if you don't... Really, what it should be is, if you don't keep up with the Brotherhood will keep up with you, you know, as it were. Like, you don't just abandon them, right? And that's something that comes across as well with Naryu and the Morag Tong quest lines, is that you can't just run away from the Tong. They will find you. You know what I mean? They always do. Just like the Brotherhood, right? They've got the Wrath of Sithis. Jesus. That thing will hunt you down. You know what I mean? Like, it will find you. So I find that to be an incredibly annoying thing. It's just a very... It's a choice, right? Thieves Guild, I'd actually love to continue that, because it did feel weird, just kind of... Like I said, with all of those, it felt weird just kind of abandoning them. Fighters Guild and Mages Guild, I can understand. Thieves Guild, it's like, okay, right? And, you know, Dark Brotherhood, it's like, okay, right? Like, just fitting those quest lines into the playthrough is so bizarre. Because it doesn't really narratively flow all too well. I think I've made it work, but it took a lot of fudging the numbers to get it to, if that makes any sense. It's just a mess. But we'll get to that when we get to it on the playthrough, like 20 years from now. But I think it's a good idea to continue those quests, right? Like, I definitely think Mages Guild could do with, like, a conflict with Manamarco. You know, like, the thing I've been saying for years is to have, you know, the Manamarco Vanis Galarian fight take place where Vanis dies. I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be cool to take part in that. I think that'd be really neat to see. And then, you know, Thieves Guild, Fighters Guild, all that stuff. There's plenty of things they could do with that. There's plenty of people or characters we could assassinate. Hell, I would honestly be interested in a, what's the word? In, like, a, you know, narrative choice. You know, remember narrative choices? Remember how we used to have those in this game? And they just kind of vanished? Like, for instance, you might have to make a decision between Naryu and the Dark Brotherhood or something like that, maybe. You know, that's an interesting concept. I'd be cool with that. Or, you know, maybe the Thieves Guild, you could betray them in some way, you know? Like, spice it up. Do something with the ideas rather than just, here's more quest, like, you know. I miss being able to make narrative things happen. And then, this is where it gets weird. Because the next one says, splitting a large zone across multiple updates. I don't know what that means. I genuinely don't know what that means. Like, does that mean we get, like, a small chunk of it initially, and then it gets periodically added to? Or that we get the zone, like, the whole thing, and then the quests are added later on? You know what I mean? Either way, that feels gross. Like, I'd rather you release a whole zone finished than release it bit by bit. And that's where we're getting into that thing that I was worried about, which is, like, I feel like removing the deadlines is just an excuse for them to not have to release a finished product, or release a product that clearly isn't finished and then go from there. And it's like, yeah, that little bullet point there kind of points directly to that, and that terrifies me, because I do not want to deal with the headache of a playthrough that would be. But they continue with, we are embarking on these changes to give the development team the space to find a new cadence that can mix content and systems with addressing feedback, fixing issues, and adding new quests and activities to existing zones and stories. It will not be as regular as the old annual cadence, so expect season launches and new content system and tests throughout the year, not necessarily in January, as we have done since 2017. And speaking of, the next big announcement will be in April 2025 as we introduce our first season. There will be much more in the April announcement, but for that you will have to wait. We still have the content update in March, and we'll give you more information about that sometime in the new year. And that's where they're going to overhaul the starter islands, so Kenarthy's Roost, Balfoyan and Bleak Rock, and Betnik and Stros Mackay. All of those places, I think, could do with a massive visual overhaul, because they feel bland as hell. And then it just kind of goes on in their closing statements, where they basically say, yeah, we had to cancel the North American 10-year event, sorry. And that's it. And overall, I think this is all, like, genuinely terrible news. Like, it sucks. Like, some of these changes are good, some of these changes are iffy, you know? Like, I like that they're making an effort. I like that they are kind of admitting, like, hey, we can't keep doing this, we can't keep it up, we're just not there, we're not able to do it. Like, big props to them for admitting it. But I also think a lot of this might have to do with the fact that they also recently unionized. ZeniMax, like, overnight like, last week, during the Game Awards, actually. Because I was initially intending to do my Game Awards stream with this game, because there was a bunch of grinding that I still needed to do for companions and stuff. But when I actually got to try to load it up, it just wouldn't load, and then I found out that the servers exploded or something, or that there was a false alarm fire and the servers had to be shut down. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. And then I find out the next day that they had unionized, and I was like, oh, there was no false alarm fire. That was them showing force, that they can make a genuine impact on the game's health if things don't go their way. So that's what I think really happened. That's my conspiracy theory, anyway, as to why all of these big changes are suddenly happening. And it's because ZeniMax sees the writing on the wall when it comes to the way Microsoft-owned studios and products have been going lately, and I cannot blame them. I don't blame them at all, in fact. I think they are absolutely in the right with what they're doing. Because, especially with the absolute farce and comedy show that was that one live stream with the combat director of the game, basically showcasing that he doesn't know how to play the game. That's embarrassing. and a lot of people were saying, like, yeah, that guy should be let go, and there should be some serious changes in the in-house in order to make things run smoother for the game. Which is also probably another reason why they unionized, so that most people wouldn't just lose their job, or that, you know, things wouldn't be shifted around too much, because they're probably terrified, because they know the game's kind of flailing a little bit right now. It's definitely not making nearly as much money as it used to, and a lot of that comes down to just less content being produced. And that's why I think they want to shift over to seasons, because they can produce more content quicker, and more specifically, they can produce more monetized content quicker. It's not about actually putting in new content that you can play, but new content that you think you can play that you might actually have to spend a little bit of money on. Because Golden Pursuits might be free for now, but I guarantee you this thing's going to be a battle pass that you have to purchase later. I can feel it. Because they're not just going to add new content for free. No. There's going to be a purchase in there somewhere. They know it. You know it. And maybe that's just ESO Plus. Maybe ESO Plus is that purchase, in which case I'm already paying for it. But you never know. You know, it could be worse. It could be an on top of that already purchase, you know, in which case I'm going to have to start considering things, you know. But I definitely think they are scared, and they are doing what they think is best, genuinely, for themselves, right, for their livelihoods, right, maybe not for the game, but for themselves. They are certainly doing what they think is best, and I can't blame them, because Microsoft absolutely would bring the axe down on them if it came down to it. I guarantee it, they would. But, yeah, I definitely think, especially with this event being as bare bones as it was, like, there's no new assets being added, or the new assets that are being added are in a Golden Pursuits that's completely unrelated to the event at hand. That tells me something. That tells me that things are looking dire right now, and the changes are happening. They're happening fast, and I don't necessarily like a whole lot of them, and it's going to create some issues with the playthroughs, right? And especially when we get into things like when am I going to return to, you know, certain areas, or what order am I supposed to return to certain areas? It's just going to be a headache for me. But I do think that making new base game content, great idea. But, like I said, you'll notice they don't mention how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to be paid for, or anything like that. They don't say any of that at all. So I'm actually quite curious how that's going to work. But, in any event, I'm looking forward to it in like a bated breath sort of sense. Like, I'm iffy about it, but I think, I don't know. I'm iffy. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, there's things that I think they could do well with this, and there's ways I could see it going terribly, horribly wrong. It's just a matter of how they handle it. But, yeah. That's basically it. That's the update. That's the New Life Festival as well. Nothing's changed. It's just been what I've been showing you. It's just doing the same old quests, doing the same old stuff, except this time with, like, 0 rewards, unless you haven't, you know, gotten any of the ones from the previous years. I guess they're viewing it as a catch-up year, but, like I said, a little stinky on my end. Sorry, not a great showing this year. Which is a shame, because they've been doing really good with all the other events, but this one, just because, you know, of Golden Pursuits, really, just because that change was made, I'm not really feeling it. But yeah, I think that's really gonna do it here, right? So, in summary, big changes are coming. Seasons instead of okay, sorry, I just had to double check that. Seasons instead of, you know, actual zones. Not really too thrilled about that, but we'll see how it goes. In terms of how the playthrough's going to function, I have no idea. You know, like I said, I'm probably just going to do a quick run-through, like a catalog, almost, if you will, right? Like a preservation project of, like, here's what the place looked like before the changes happen. Just in, you know, just for myself, so that I remember what's changed or how things are different. Because they say that it's just visual stuff, but I'm almost not certain that it will be. You know what I mean? Or I'd like to know what the visual changes are. So I'm going to be doing a playthrough of that, just to see, you know, and also just to refresh myself to get an idea of how things should go for the playthrough and whatnot. And depending on how long they are, I'll probably just release them as the raw streams. I don't know. I got to think about it. But that's the plan. So I'm just going to do the starter zones first, and then go from there. And then we will see, you know, how it goes. We'll just... literally, that's all we can do. We can just wait and see how it goes, because there's no telling where the game goes from here, but the way I see it, it's looking like maintenance mode to me. But that's just me. I'm pessimistic, I guess, or at least realistic. Seeing a drastic change like this, it could really turn off a lot of the player base, or it could attract a lot of the wrong kind of player base. It kind of remains to be seen. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed my dour fortune tellings, and I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Yes, this was a Christmas video. Sorry to poop all over your Christmas, but it is what it is. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video, whatever that may be, whatever update video it is, or whatever horrible Starfield playthrough video it is, or perhaps even in the Starter Zone Remembrance, I guess we will call it. But anyways, goodbye.